Hello, hello, hello. Welcome on in. Grab a seat, grab a tea, get extra comfy. Hi, if you are new here, my name is Yuki Boobuki, princess of all things spooky and ooky, but the only thing scary about me is how much I actually love the Battle Sisters. So, we are reacting to yet another Warhammer 40k video. Wow, Yuki, you're doing a great job. Okay. I have an obsession. You're here for it. You know what you signed up for. But actually, I do have good news. It's not another bricky video. We are watching Loudon. I'm gonna butcher it. 40k Sororitas, Sisters of Battle, lore and history. And we're gonna give this a shot. We'll give it a go. I'm gonna just binge the whole hour in 12 minutes. So, strap in, buckle up, sit down, grab in, get a drink and a snack. All right. Yeah. I'm obsessed with the Sisters of Battle. I think in Warhammer, if I ever got to do tabletop stuff, I would collect the Sisters of Battle. I think they're the coolest, and I want to drop a church on somebody. That's the introduction to the video. Let's get right into the video. I don't know why I'd feel like I have to do that every time, but I do. Bloop. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah. Premiere miniature painting. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Not in my Hope Hammer, there's not. Me and the homies love Hope Hammer. Okay. Pain is the sister who fights at my side. Pain insists that I stand my ground, steady my aim, and fight on. Though my lifeblood falls like rain to the thirsting soil, Pain is an ally. Pain is a friend. Pain is truth. Sister Ainika Nabotu, Order of the that is a word. Valorous Heart Act. Hi, if you're new here, I've never learned how to read. I'm doing my best. Please forgive. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my part. Adepta Sororitas, the cool Battle Sisters. Beautiful women. I want to be a Battle Sister. Someone make it happen. See, look, that's me right there. I'm actually so excited. I'm sorry. I know I'm doing, but this is cool as heck. They give me so pumped. I like orcs and I like Battle Sister. Oh, she's pretty. Gasp. Yeah. Do. The sisters of all humanity
are the walking epitome of devotion and faith for the human servants of the Imperium. They are revered as the most pious of all the Emperor of Mankind's weapons.
I'm a pious man, a man of God. Nothing will ever make me stray my path.
More commonly, they are known as the Sisters of Battle or the Sisterhood. They're well known for their near unbreakable faith in the divinity of the Emperor, but are equally feared and respected for their unyielding and uncompromising nature. They wage wars of faith on behalf of the Imperial Creed, the belief system that all of humanity is now bound to follow throughout the galaxy. They hunt and exterminate the heretics, unsanctioned psykers and mutants who threaten the sanctity of mankind and the Emperor's domain. Along with this, they seek to purify the galaxy by obliterating Xenos armies which pose a threat to their holy territories. For these reasons and more, there are obvious comparisons to make between the Sisters and the Inquisition, for both are uncompromisingly ruthless and
I think that the Inquisition also sounds really cool, but I think it's because I think it sounds like some Van Helsing, cool stuff. Though, I think in one of these many Warhammer videos that I have made, someone told me that all the Inquisitors or Inquisition people are jerks, and I don't like that. Or we talked about it on stream, can't remember. Either one, comment down below if you agrees, or if there's one inquisitor that is not a big massive jerk. I would like to hear your opinions.
Entirely devoted to carrying out their actions in the name of the Emperor, even though very often these may be misguided. The Sororitas in battle will often be heard uttering unrelenting chants and hymnals that resonate across cities and even continents. Faith is both their shield and their weapon.
What is this? It looks like a fairy, or like a fake angel.
Advancing across ruined battlefields and shattered cities of humanity with righteous fervour, they bring the Emperor's judgment down upon the enemies of mankind, with, for example, their exorcist missiles raining upon enemy as their holy fire engulfs all. The central figure for any Sororitas order is known as the Canoness. She is their spiritual and military leader, and in some situations may also lead an entire world, dependent on its status. But a Canoness will never shy from battle. In the most important assaults, she will lead the charge at the forefront of her troops, intoning commands to launch a final critical assault, accompanied by her Battle Sisters and Dominion squads, who will unleash precise concussive bolt gun fusillades and melter streams which will carve and disintegrate through armoured enemies with their concentrated heat energy. Above them, Seraphim descend from the air, landing upon their unwitting enemy as they deliver swift, deadly blows, bisecting and decapitating their enemies before they're even aware of what holy judgment they may be facing. But the Adepta Sororitas are not merely well-disciplined and trained soldiers of the Emperor. It is their faith that makes them so indomitable and formidable, where the psychic power of the warp is, by the period of M41, an embraced aspect of the Imperium's military and more civil affairs, siphoning warp power into a well-trained, carefully sanctioned vessel. The powers of the Sororitas are more vague and less understood, for they invoke the literal power of prayer and faith, and by doing so, it can render them to their enemies seemingly invincible.
They literally have the power of God and anime on their side. Sorry,
they can withstand
I got a DM
the
about
most intense of incendiary assaults, fire and flame that would vaporize and disintegrate less well-protected units. They may dodge enemy fire with an apparent sense of foresight, only observed comparably among the Xenos, and most well known is their uncanny ability to make vital shots count, to land especially challenging or critical rounds, finding their targets very often when they're needed the most.
Are they like orcs,
locating
that if they believe
weak spots in an opponent's armor, causing catastrophic explosions.
See, look, I think this is cool. What is this? I want to be this one. I like this one. It's so cool. I was gonna ask, actually, while I was thinking about it, though this looks like... These are not, because it looks like she's shooting at this man's. I was going to ask if the Battle Sisters ever fight alongside Space Marines, but these must not. These are not. These must be Chaos. These must be heretics. Is this the melter, by the way? I'm learning, so bear with me in my questions
sources.
And comments. And
some might call these events pure chance or rare, but they are also consistent enough to be difficult to dismiss as merely random. Many of the most vehement anti-religious advocates of the Imperium, such as the Custodes and the Astartes, have been given on occasion pause to consider if there is something more here. Of course, for those who do not hold the belief of the divinity of the God Emperor, they tend to see things as being more logical and practical. The Emperor is aiding his humble servants, reaching out as he may do from time to time with slivers of psychic power. Of course, though, to the sisters themselves, these beneficial occurrences are no mystery. They are the vessels of the Emperor's divinity, and through them he manifests his will on the battlefield. However you choose to look at it, this is inevitably the case. One thing that is curious, though, is how their powers are specifically manifested. The power of the Sororitas and their faith is not confirmed as being necessarily a direct psychic manifestation of warp power, as do say psychers, which has led to much open speculation as to specifically how they fuel their own power. It also can be the case that a sister of the faith could be both a psyker and also imbued with power from her faith. These inconsistencies have been best highlighted during the fall of Cadia and the subsequent psychic awakening. During the battle for Cadia, the living Saint Celestine had her power significantly curtailed by a null field generated by Necron Blackstone pylons. Although it did not extinguish their powers entirely, the sisters were described as being heavily dulled by its effect, making them near enough comparable to mortal soldiers. At a separate instance,
but that will not stop a sister.
While exploring the Pariah Nexus, a psychic null territory generated again by the Necron, was seen to heavily affect astropaths, psychers, and even ordinary humans who held minimal...
So, as a question for people who keep up with probably more in-depth lore, I know that Warhammer is, well, about war on many levels, about many things. I feel like Basically, if you were to like TLDR Warhammer, everybody hate everybody fight each other all the time. But realistically, how often are these people like combating? Like, is it like from the standpoint of like regular humany people on a planet, can you like not even walk out on the streets because like the war is like blaring, like you can't even set like, is there places where there is some kind of quote unquote peace and or calm, or is like just every inch of every land combat active PvP zone? Because surely we can't keep, I don't know, making more life or trying to live or trying to sustain these people if there is no spot.
Or psychic awareness. Sororitas were still able to use at least some of their powers though, so all of this has made it difficult to really clarify just how the Sororitas manifest their faith.
It's because
using
they're
the warp
cool.
or not. Some will speculate that the sisters do draw mainly from the warp, but to do so at a more low-level and unconscious manner, almost passively, so that they do not need to befall the same dangers of psykers, which makes sense, as after all the Sororitas are not spitting out psychic assaults from their weapons. Most of their powers can be seen as more of a gentle nudge, a lean, rather than a direct attack. Sometimes it can help them to heal themselves from what would be otherwise mortal wounds. Another theory has been that they are able to somehow store power in themselves in their faith as a vessel. Again, similarly to something like the orcs, they
Is he
generate
gonna show my
kind of
favorite
independent
figure?
psychic
I
field
want
as
one
their
so
faith
bad.
manifested in reality, similar to an orc's warg. But this is a very unclear
Log.
field of knowledge, and not one that is likely
Oh,
going
that
to be
one's
clarified
cool.
definitively
Wait, that looks like
anytime
an
soon,
Adeptus
as
Mechanicus
unsurprisingly, the
Battle
devout
Sister,
followers
though.
of the Imperial faith are not especially keen to be studied under the lens of the biologist or mechanicus, least of all
No,
under
he
the
didn't.
pre-conclusion of defining the mechanics of their faith. As Battle Sisters advance, they're joined by zealous preachers, death cult assassins, Repentia squads, all fighting with equal fervour to rid the galaxy of heresy. Arco-flagellants, torturous walkers, carving paths through the enemy army, driven by the pain and suffering of sinners hard.
What is that? I was listening before anybody goes, you weren't listening to the but I ain't never seen something so horrifying before. What is that?
Hardwired into their frames. The Adepta Sororitas battle cries are deafening, a testament to their devotion to the Emperor and their duty to serve him. For they are the epitome of devotion, faith, and unwavering loyalty to the God Emperor in the Imperium. They're known for their effectiveness through battle, uncompromising nature, and an ability to invoke supernatural power through their unwavering faith itself. They host a whole arsenal of weaponry
Wait, that one's
coupled with their
cool.
divine
I like that
abilities,
one. Looks
and
like
this
an Iron
makes them
Maiden.
an incredibly formidable force on the battlefield. The Adepta Sororitas' ultimate goal is to rid the galaxy of heretics and other threats to the Imperium's purity. They will stop at nothing to achieve this. They're revered and feared in equal measure, much like Inquisitors, with their unwavering faith serving as a beacon of hope for the Imperium's people, but also in a stern warning to its enemies.
Faithful servants of the Emperor.
The Imperial Creed is the singular and near mandatory in M41 faith of the Imperium of Man. Enforced across the vast expanse of the hundreds of thousands of worlds under its dominion, absolute devotion is required upon many worlds, and the consequences for not demonstrating correct observance to the rituals and daily worship can carry severe penalties, as with most things in the Imperium. In spite of its broad application, though, across innumerable worlds, there is considerable variance to be found in both the ritual and interpretations of the Imperial Creed. However, one fundamental principle always remains sacrosanct: the Emperor of mankind is the supreme deity of all humanity. This is of course so obvious that the thought of any alternative view seems incomprehensible among the chattering masses of human souls bound within the plasteel walls of hive cities. Yet there are some who may at times choose to question these certainties, and so any deviation from this core belief is considered heresy of the most abhorrent kind, and therefore punishable by death without exception, very likely as slowly and painfully as possible, and also very probably on public.
I will say that I think that's very funny. I played Space Marines 2 and we beat it on stream, but I think like the ending sequence, like there's a chaplain and he's like, brother. I'm sure maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I guess warnings for spoilers if you haven't played Space Marines 2. This is your trigger warning. there might be spoilers in the next sentences that I say. So that is your warning. But I guess because Titus messes with a lot of like chaos infused objects, the chaplain is like, brother, I cannot believe that you would be any form of okay. Like, obviously you've got some sort of ick, some sort of cootie. So I know that they're usually, I wave my hand iffily, seems to be kind of quick on the trigger, but I'm sure for lore and story purposes, that's why they're not in Space Marines 2, because Titus be banger, he's fire. But it was kind of interesting to see how, like, I would ask questions and then everybody in chat would be like, heresy, you're a heretic. And I'm like, I just want to know if I throw it back for the chaplain, he would ask me if it was fast enough. You know? Okay, I'm funny. I'm sorry. I'll watch the video.
To ensure the Emperor's will is seen to be observed. In the late period of the Horus Heresy, yet still before his interring upon the Golden Throne, the Emperor was already venerated by many as a divine being. His extraordinary leadership during the Great Crusade and his actions elevated him to the level of human legend, with some primitive societies even already hailing him as a god, because what other conclusion could they come to? This huge golden figure accompanied by angelic beings descending from the heavens on chariots wreathed in flame. Wherever he went, the Emperor's unwavering will and unbreakable charisma won over even the most savage of humans, who were left in awe of his power. Though he himself denied any claim to his divinity to the final days, the Emperor's godlike reputation only grows stronger among his subjects, many believing, of course, that his denial was in actuality a test of the truly faithful. Only a true god would deny his divinity, making any attempts to prevent a religious following from taking hold near impossible at that point.
It will, and we do have a video where I react to some, like, thick Emperor lore. It will never cease to be extremely hilarious to me that he was doing everything that he could to wipe out religion, so that people would feel, like, truly free and all that stuff, only for him to become the biggest religious icon in the humanity land, whatever the actual name for the faction is. Like, he's like, I'm trying to prove a point, and they were like, what if we completely missed it? Okay, cool, thanks, awesome. Now we have cult.
With the devastating betrayal of the War Master Horus, who led roughly half the Space Marine legions into the embrace of chaos, the resulting civil war infamously near destroyed the Imperium and humanity, culminating in the most horrifying and destructive battles ever seen as the traitors manifested their rage upon the Imperial Palace and Terra. During this conflict, many humans were already worshipping the Emperor as a god, and many more turned to prayer and faith as a last.
Will someone join my Discord and send me a picture of the Space Marine boys that joined the Horus Heresy to be on the side of chaos? Because my hypothesis is that they were all ugly, and that's why they were mad, because one of those boys was like really beautiful. Sanguinius? Question mark. And then if you join the Discord and send the picture, and Sanguinius was one of the ones that left, he left because he was beautiful, and he pulled a Seth Roth, and he wanted to be in that Tresemme commercial.
Lost hope. They saw no possibility of their survival other than the divine intervention of the Emperor
Final Fantasy
himself,
VII, by the way, in case someone knows who Seth Roth is, but I think the whole world does.
Duels which defied explanation other than the supernatural. Some mortal Astartes were able to best or survive conflicts in which they should have been otherwise incapable of enduring, yet somehow they did. And for some who heard of such miracles, the conclusion was surely self-evident. In the aftermath of the Emperor's sacrifice, accompanied by the stories, tales, the martyrs coming out of the Siege of Terra, as well as a temporary destabilization in authority, this meant that previously outlawed concepts, such as the worship of the Emperor as a deity, exploded across the Imperium. Yet the period to come was not one of glorious unification. The Imperium was burning, many worlds were still gripped by traitors, and so with this adoration also came fear. The War Master's betrayal had cast doubt upon the loyalty of all within the Imperium. Countless self-proclaimed prophets emerged across the galaxy, each claiming to know the Emperor's true will and branding anyone who opposed them as a traitor. Very often these were moments of all too typically human greed and aspiration. Seeing an excuse, an opportunity, many were able to thus eliminate their rivals and
Me and
take
the
hold
homies
of
hate
power.
corporate greed.
The most zealous among them founded cults of fanatical devotees who were all too willing to crush any opposition to their beliefs with extreme prejudice, especially in the aftermath of the heresy. Incidentally, you still see this in the contemporary Imperium among the faithful, roving bands of zealots who will purge through lower levels of hive cities, seeking the mutant, the faithless, the heretical, or quite honestly, anybody who just gets in their way.
Yeah.
Often the definition to meet the standards of heresy as we know are pretty...
Why does she look like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre character? What is this? Bring back my my pretty ladies. Cause this lady kind of scary. What do you mean?
loose, and a case of simply somebody is getting purged today by fire, one way or the other.
Yeah.
If they're a heretic, then all the better.
Burn the witch!
Eventually, these early cults of the Emperor were whittled down until one would rise to prominence, the Temple of the Saviour Emperor. Though initially based on terror, its influence spread rapidly across the Imperium, penetrating every level of Imperial society. The impressively pervasive uptake by populations meant that for those in power who resisted its dogma, they would often face unrecoverable consequences. Planetary governors who refused to obey its edicts saw their worlds starved of resources, while dissenters among the masses were given the most dangerous and deadly industrial assignments, or simply just went missing, executed as heretics, who knows. By the 32nd millennium, though, an astonishingly fast period of time for conversion in the aftermath of the heresy, the majority of humanity had become adherents of the Temple of the Saviour Emperor. Its teachings had become the official faith of the Imperium, and it was given now the title of the Adeptus Ministorum. The head of the Ministorum would in time become a new position which would sit on the...
So, question 587. The Adeptus Mechanicus is different than this, correct? The Adeptus Ministorum, or whatever he said. And how does the world feel about the Adeptus Mechanicus? Like, are they viewed kind of negatively, or are they like... Because I know that the Emperor... I think he partnered with them intentionally with the want of like better, stronger armies, weaponry and stuff. So it's not like they didn't have some kind of approval. And I think there is some kind of like I want to say, when I've talked about this on stream, that some of them may believe that either the Emperor is part machine cool guy or is blessed by whatever they believe in or something. Kind of someone can correct me in the comments. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. Now, I am kind of like a lore story buff, so I do think I'm better at remembering some things than others. So, if you tell me, I will file it, I'll log it, yeah.
Council as a High Lord of Terror. These were the very highest senior officials who would rule humanity until the period of M41 and were very obviously immensely powerful. Only those such as the Mechanicus, Custodes, Astartes and so forth would be tolerated in not explicitly worshipping the imperial religion or even in deviating in some other way from its teachings due to their close historical association.
What's a Custodes then? Because we'll go back. I heard him say words.
Which would sit on the council as a High Lord of Terror. These were the very highest senior officials who would rule humanity until the period of M41 and were very obviously immensely powerful. Only those such as the Mechanicus, Custodes, Astartes and so forth would be...
What's an Astartes? Okay, so he said something kind of relevant to what I just asked. Is there a council? Is that what he's saying? There's like a council of like leadership where they get together and they blab or whatever. But what is a Custodes and what is an Astartes?
Tolerated in not explicitly worshipping the imperial religion or even in deviating in some other way from its teachings due to their close historical associations with the emperor himself, and also the necessary political caution was applicable, something true even now, as Roberto Guilliman now faces the reverse of circumstance, where he, as an individual who walked the galaxy during the Crusade and the knowledge of the imperial truth, the atheist and rationalist perspective present in that time, which is still held by most Astartes and the Custodes, he must equally tolerate the religious aspects of the Imperium and Ministorum. The Imperium in M41 is far from stable, and the very worst thing that could happen would be some kind of holy civil war, something that those who currently oversee it are all too aware of. And we will circle back to look at how these Sororitas emerge in this time in the next section. For now, in the contemporary Imperium, the Sisters of Sororitas will usually be chosen from the rigorous training candidates of the Schola Progenium. As with all the elite military forces of the Imperium, extremely high standards are, of course, demanded. The Sororitas are no exception. In many ways they're held to an even higher standard, as not only their combat skills and loyalty is tested, but also the purity of their faith. As many of you will recall, the Schola Progenium are those special schools upon Imperial worlds who train often, but not necessarily, orphans of high-ranking Imperials or nobles. There are no shortage of candidates, but it need not necessarily always be the most high-ranking officials whose offspring end up at the gates of the Schola, for of course they want to look after themselves and their children, but the nature of the Imperium means that there are often many candidates. Once they've entered the Schola, they will either emerge as candidates for elite service or not at all. Within its walls they are moulded brutally into the special forces, the assassins, the officers, and unflinching zealots who will pledge their unwavering devotion to the Emperor. For those who show exceptional spiritual and physical resilience, they may be selected to serve in the Adepta Sororitas, the sanctified all-female arm of the ecclesiarchy. Whereas the more academic positions within the Ministorum, such as the cardinals, the missionaries, the preachers who spread the imperial faith, the sisters are the defenders of the faith and its sanctity. Their holy mission is to annihilate any who have strayed from the path of righteousness and are now beyond redemption. Their piety is evident in every aspect of their lives, from their fervent prayers to the saints of the Imperium to their meticulous care of their war gear. Physical and spiritual conditioning go hand in hand, and a strong body is the best vessel for a strong soul. Combat training and drills are placed on the same level as spiritual rituals, as sacred as any hymn, and their martial practices as important as religious ones. When the sisters deploy to battle, they do so not only to eradicate the heretics, but also to reconsecrate the corrupted lands. For example, on the world of Gathalamor, which saw the forces of chaos corrupt huge legions of the citizenry, they were employed in the ritual and work of uncovering relics for the heretics. In the aftermath and successful cleansing of the world, it would take the Sororitas stationed there weeks and months to purify and purge the relic structures and twisted cultists who remained, so their work is always ongoing. The Sororitas, with their mobile battle chapels and invasion cathedrams, are the very symbols of their unshakable faith, not to mention intimidating and impressive structures to be deployed to the battlefield. They advance under the gaze of the adamantine gargoyles, which pour forth blessed water and holy flame to cleanse the ground they tread. Their holy wars and crusades will rage until every last vestige of heresy is eradicated, and all who oppose the Imperium and the Emperor have been purged. Their overarching mission is to keep the Imperium pure, free of corruption and twisted monstrosities. They fulfill this sacred duty every single day with unflinching and some might say unthinking.
A lot of you are probably going to be like, no, Yuki, I've never heard of such a thing. But I am so excited for, I bet my eyes, Bolt Gun 2, where you actually get to play as a sister battle. I played the demo on stream, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So that's also why I'm like, I should watch the videos, so that way whenever I play it on stream, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah!
Devotion. For all of this though, the sisters remain, like most of the Imperial military apparatus, beholden to the bureaucracy of the Imperium, as are technically the Astartes. The more bureaucratic wing of the Faith Keepers of the Imperium are as noted known as the Adeptus Ministorum or the Ecclesiarchy. They control and dictate the tenets, the dogma of how the Imperial Creed is seen and disseminated since its inception. It is, just like the Administratum, an absolutely vast service which is responsible for the religious instruction of billions upon billions of citizens. Its legions of preachers, confessors, missionaries, ministers and so on ensure that the Emperor is venerated in the correct manner and that civilian zeal is sufficiently channeled appropriately. Heresy on different worlds may be judged more loosely or more harshly, but generally speaking, even something as minimal as failing to report lapsed faith to the Ministorum is considered tantamount to heresy. The Ecclesiarchy, the Ministorum, is absolutely pervasive throughout the Imperium. It deals with blasphemy ruthlessly and with finality. Confessions are procured, conspirators named, guilty parties executed,
heck are these guys?
often publicly in the most horrific manner possible. This is for most worlds not something unusual, but in fact a daily occurrence. Administrating such a purge is a sacred...
That looks like a safety hazard. Like, this metal, hot, on top of your head, plus it is actively lit on fire. Like, you're gonna combust.
duty, and is conducted by many amongst the ecclesiarchy without joy or malice, or at least this is what they would have you believe. Over thousands of years, the Adeptus Ministorum has guided the servants of the Emperor, rooting out innumerable aberrant and abhorrent faiths. They identify and purge the Imperium of demagogues and firebrands. The period of time in which this can occur, though, is certainly variable. In some instances, cardinals or other high authority members of the ecclesiarchy have been known to take their own interpretations of, say, the Emperor's Tarot too far, and by the time anybody has realised what's going on, severe damage has been done. This is nothing unusual though, in fact it's fairly standard for the Imperium. In a galactic empire of over 1 million worlds, not every single person can be watched carefully all the time with sufficient scrutiny. And thus beneath the ecclesiarchical palace on Terra lie miles upon miles of twisting catacombs, inside of which are housed the records of the Ministorum. Priestly journals, great deeds of faith and purging scrolls of confession inked in the blood of those who had blasphemed. Not to mention the chronicles of Lord Van Dyer and other similar but less false prophets are kept under a constant close guard in the depths of this ancient library. Even further still lies the Vault of Origins, a hallowed chamber whose location and method of access are known only to the ecclesiarchs and their closest advisor, wherein the earliest records of the Temple of the Saviour Emperor are preserved. However, as with all across the galaxy since the opening of the Great Rift, the Ministorum has had to defend against a litany of problems. Heretic uprisings, faithless citizenry are a constant scourge, often as bad as Xenos incursions upon shrine worlds. When possible, the ecclesiarchy will rely on local planetary militia, their regiments temporarily seconded to the Ministorum's control, to deal with such insurgencies and encroachments. However, where such hostilities pose a significant threat beyond the local garrison's ability to purge, the Ministorum deploys the Adepta Sororitas to eradicate the enemies of the faith. And this is a point that I think is worth to underscore as we finish this chapter. For all the immense battles that we hear about throughout Imperial history, last stands made against the nightmare Xenos of the Tyranid and the Necron, legendary battles of the Heresy, Astartes' assaults into heretic traitor marine planets and so on. The Imperium itself...
Isn't this guy in the funky hat kind of like an important figure? I feel like I've seen him before. Or am I crazy? I could be crazy. Like, there is some actually, like, very prominent named people in this, right?
Actually spends the vast majority of its time fighting against itself. This is not something you regularly get the feel for in 40k, but the Imperial Guard and the Sisters of Battle spend large amounts of their time dealing with uprisings, rebel assaults, sectors of hive worlds that fall to cults and disturbed traitors. And so while facing down 20-foot-tall towering monstrosities, it's true your average guardsman or sororitas might be a little bit outmatched. But when facing human cultists, who maybe have an autogun, a machete, just a board with a nail in it, they're considerably more terrifying. And that's not to belittle them in any way. If the Imperium did not deal with these threats, hive worlds would fall too often and with devastating consequences. In fact, on some worlds where cultist uprisings get out of control, things can spiral very quickly. Just look at the infamous siege of Vrax or the disastrous apocalypse of the world of Krieg. And it's not to belittle the Sororitas either. They are more than capable of dealing with some of the most foul Xenos in the galaxy. They've been regularly known on occasion to save Astartes, save Custodes, but they are also absolutely a massive power force against the cultists, the human uprisings that we see all the time. So having this powerful force to step in is absolutely necessary, and when the Sisters of Battle administer the wrath of the ecclesiarchy to the enemies of mankind, they're a terrifying, unbreakable force to be reckoned with. They will without mercy slaughter the psychers, heretics and mutants within our midst, using the chainsword, the purging flamer, the blade. They will keep the Imperium purified, and any who attempt to disrupt this holy duty will be scoured from existence. But how and when did the Sororitas come to be? Well, this all begins with the Age of Apostasy.
Apostasy? What is that? Well, okay, I'm sure he's going to tell me, but what does that
The Age
mean?
of Apostasy was arguably one of the most significant and extremely disruptive periods in the history of the Imperium. Occurring early in M36 and spanning many decades, the Age of Apostasy was...
Alright, sorry, people, sorry. I had to go check on Fox Mom and Fox Dad and, all that good stuff. All that good stuff. I hope you guys are all having a good day. I hope you all are having a great time. We will get right back into the video. Okay.
was
Boom.
essentially a massive bureaucratic power struggle, which overflowed into actual warfare and saw not only the ecclesiarchy but the entire Imperium brought to a state of severe disruption, not quite a full outbreak conflict such as the heresy, but not far off. The central figure for this shameful period in the history of the Imperium is Goj Vandaya, a tyrant and charismatic figure who is said to have risen through the ranks of the Administratum, eventually to also become the Ecclesiarch and High Lord of the Ministorum. He achieved these positions, it's said, through bribery, coercion, blackmail, and murder. These positions were immensely powerful as the High Lords were, during this period, effectively the word of the Emperor in all but name. The Ecclesiarchy has, since its expansion into the administrative affairs of the Imperium, continually caused friction within the Administratum itself, which generally views itself as the true central power of the Imperium above all others. So when the Ecclesiarchy steadily became more powerful, this was a problem from the perspective of the Administratum. And things became so bad through M34 and M35 that eventually when the Administratum gained more power, when it was in favour effectively, the Ecclesiarchy decided that they may be better off not being based on terror at all, and would instead resituate themselves to the earlier mentioned Ophelia 7 in Segmentum Tempestus. The ecclesiarchical palaces on Ophelia 7 covered 90,000 square miles of surface and reached some 4,000 miles into the sky. They were described as only being rivaled by the palaces on Terra itself. Now finding themselves separated from the Administratum, the power of the ecclesiarchy grew once again, and they raised huge tithes across imperial worlds to pay for the massive works being commissioned by cardinals across the galaxy. They also began to strengthen and build up their own military forces. Since M32, the ecclesiarchy had the all-male Frateris Templar, who had operated effectively as the private army of the ecclesiarchy. They also began forming their own naval fleets. Cumulatively, these forces would often rival that of the Imperial Guard. And this continued for some time. The ecclesiarchy had now effectively consolidated its power also upon Ophelia 7, and its separation from Terra and its actions since were beginning to become deeply concerning for many. Some 300 years later, though, under the new ecclesiarch of Gregor XI, the ecclesiarchy were moved back to Terra now at great expense. This new leader of the imperial cult believed that this was where they needed to be, being close to the emperor as much as possible. But all this constant change came at a massive expense, and there were many who objected at the vast tithes still being recovered by the ecclesiarchy when there were more critical things that needed attending to, not just building churches and statues. The response was one of violence. The Frateris Templar were used to crush any dissent, and even the Assassinorum said to be used to eliminate voices of power who were questioning the ecclesiarchy publicly. The palaces, temples, halls of residence of the Ministorum grew ever larger and ever more lustrous. But in the early period of M36, the stability of the Imperium ran aground. Warp storms restricted considerable travel between worlds, and this placed strain upon the relationship and resources being harvested by the Administratum and the ecclesiarchy once again. Worlds collapsed, being cut off from support as they had done in the darkest times of the past, and many imperial worlds were opened to the predation of Xenos and heretics alike. On many worlds, the iron rule of the ecclesiarchy was also now out of control. Not being monitored, they descended into extreme purges of heretics, burnings, executions, and just wild ritualized frivolity. This is where the figure known as Goj Vandaya enters the fray. Vandaya had risen to become the 361st High Lord of the Administratum, and at this time had a reputation as a staunch resistor to the dominance of the ecclesiarchy. Many speculated that he'd used assassins to gain his position, but any who spoke out about this against him mysteriously disappeared.
Any who spoke out against these really cool looking assassins got to meet these really cool looking assassins.
Dead. So soon none dared oppose him. Just before his elevation to the position as a High Lord of Terror, Vandai
Oh, Bubby,
orchestrated
what's
the
wrong?
appointment of a weak-minded individual named Paulus III as the head
Guys,
of the
call Ember.
ecclesiarchy, ensuring no
He can hear you
resistance
through
to
the
his
screen.
subsequent ascent. This was a figure that he knew he could easily control. And Pauli's reign was marred by rumours of depravity that circulated among the ruling elite of the Imperium. But again, where did those rumours specifically come from? Anybody can guess at that. But consequently, confidence in this new ecclesiarch was dwindling, and Vandai seized this opportunity.
He's just gonna sit over there
Leading
and
a
be
loyal band
pouty.
of followers, he stormed the ecclesiarchal palace, eliminating any who stood in their way, and it is said that Vandai discovered the ecclesiarch engaged in unspeakable debauchery, and that if exposed, would have brought
Debauchery.
eternal shame to the Imperium and the ecclesiarchy. Without trial, Pauli III was slain. It should be noted that this was merely the account of the victors, of course, and when it comes to someone like Vandai, who can really say what happened, it's just as likely that he walked in, killed a completely innocent ecclesiarch out of hand, and came up with a reasonable story to cover this. Then again, he may well have walked in and found him in a state of affairs that would make even Slaanesh blush. Vandai declared himself the new
not the
ecclesiarch
Slaanesh.
and master of the administratum, asserting control over both institutions. He was effectively now the Dr. Zaius of the Imperium. In the following days, Vandai further consolidated his power through brutal purges of the Holy Synod. Some cardinals fled while others valiantly objected, only to then meet their demise. Vandai replaced them with submissive figures or cunning allies who would share his agenda. With his authority firmly established, High Lord Vandai unleashed his unhinged ambitions. He claimed to speak with the authority of the Emperor himself, communing with the God Emperor during trance-like states where he would behave erratically. Emerging from these trances, Vandai would enter fits of rage, demanding that his
So what, he get like high or something? Is he high and crazy?
every word be meticulously transcribed by an army of scribes and clerks who followed him around constantly. He was particularly keen on inventing ingenious torture methods and having these sent out to be trialled. Never one for reading or scripture though himself, many of his orders defied logic or reason, which would often result in violent actions being taken against different segments of the Imperium's population, or just offensively wasting resources and funds. Vandai was undoubtedly a compulsive liar, and also quite obviously unstable, if not insane. He was obsessed with himself, and often made bizarre orders that led to the deaths, in fact, of millions. He relied on the sycophants who were themselves desperate for power, wealth, and stroking their egos who surrounded him in order to be successful. And Vandai secured the will of many through his charisma and his confidence. But he was truly an abhorrent, disgusting individual who was only ever concerned with himself. The only real question was who and when was somebody going to stop him.
Never.
Vandai had received word from his agents about a remarkable sisterhood residing on the secluded agri-world of San Leor. Known as the Daughters of the Emperor, they were said to hold unwavering devotion to, well, the Emperor, and of course, exceptional combat skills. The unsuspecting inhabitants of San Leor were taken aback when thousands of Vandai's followers just marched into their humble towns, demanding unwavering devotion to the High Lord under threat of death. At the gates of the convent, Vandai encountered resistance, the gatekeeper declaring that the Daughters of the Emperor recognized only the authority of the God Emperor and would not open their gates for any man. Vandai
I refuse to open my gates to just any man thing. Derogatory. That's funny. Like, they're like, last I checked, you weren't the emperor. So, like, this door, closed. You get your heresy up out of here.
Remained completely calm. He requested entry into the convent with just a small retinue, promising to demonstrate the Emperor's grace upon himself. The Daughters of the Emperor reluctantly agreed, leading Vandai and his retinue into the central courtyard. There, Vandai dramatically brandished his rosarius and ordered one of his bodyguards to shoot him. With a trembling hand, the guard aimed his las pistol and fired at Vandai's heart. In an instant, a blinding white light enveloped Vandai, and when it faded, he stood unscathed. Witnessing this apparent miracle, everyone in the courtyard fell to their knees, pledging their allegiance to High Lord Vandai. But of course, in truth, Vandai had deceived the sisters, exploiting a common trick with simple worlds of the Imperium who may be unfamiliar with technology such as a rosarius.
Okay, sorry about that part 2. I had to help
Humanity,
Fox Mom.
or sometimes the aid of Xenos, similarly to things like digital weaponry. These are housed often in jewellery, creating an energy field projected around the wearer to deflect, in this instance, the guard's las pistol shot. The daughters of the Emperor believed, though, that they had witnessed a true miracle and committed themselves to serving Vandire, changing their name from the Daughters of the Emperor to the now Brides of the Emperor, which I want to interject with a personal opinion. I hate this title, primarily because it sounds stupid. Let us all be glad that it didn't last for long. Now, as Vandire's personal bodyguard, the sisters or...
Okay, he said Brides of the Emperor sounds stupid. In my opinion, that's scary, actually. Daughters almost feel like they're looking up to a father figure, kind of sweet, kind of cute, but vibes. Brides is like side eye. What are you doing to these ladies, sir, who has committed trickery? I hope they beat him up.
Brides of the Emperor received advanced training, equipping them with the finest in Imperial weapons and armour. They were always by his side, ready to carry out any action or order that he demanded, be that personal defence or executing innocents on a whim. But we were entering into truly dark days, and it's often what's now referred to as the Reign of Blood, for anonymous millions had been burned in the fires of Vandire's reign. And this is where an alternative faction of the Imperial cult would re-emerge. The Confederation of Light, thought long destroyed in M32, it re-emerged and would denounce Vandire as a traitor. Led by the preacher Sebastian Thor, the Confederation of Light spread its message as a church dedicated not to the politics and rule of the Imperium, but to the compassion and mercy of the Emperor, to a brutalized people, and we'll talk more about how they were involved in one of the first wars of faith a little later. But more importantly was Sebastian Thor, for he was a supreme leader and orator. He could sway whole worlds to his cause. Their own crusade of true faith now cast aside those who remained loyal to the existing ecclesiarch. The moment of this crusade was so significant, and the damage that had occurred under Vandire so blatant, that even now Astartes and Mechanicus had resisted joining until the point of Thor actually travelling to Terra. Vandire had become clearly insane at this point, so much so that senior officials on Terra were attempting to remove him officially, but as head of the Administratum he simply just dissolved the Senatorium Imperialis and declared the Mechanicus and Astartes heretics and traitors to the Imperium. Clearly things were not going to end in a peaceful resolution, and it's a blessing things did not end up far worse than they could have. An elite Space Marine strike force and the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus assaulted the renegade High Lord Goj Vandire's seat of power, the massive ecclesiarchal palace on Terra. They mistakenly, however, though, thought that Vandire was only protected by legions of zealous but ineffective Fraterus Templar troops who were as much a danger to an Astartes as an Astartes would to a Custodes. On the ground, the reality was starkly different. They found themselves now facing an all-female elite force clad in power armour, wielding somehow bolt weapons, and were fighting with a ferocity and passion remarkable even to the Astartes. In many ways, this conflict was something akin to the Siege of Terra II on a far smaller scale, because the sisters, fearless and fanatical, fought to the last, in the misguided belief that they were protecting the Emperor himself. It became a grinding and bloody siege of the ecclesiarchal palace complex, lasting many months, and Vandire's army withstood every assault. It would take the Adeptus Custodes to in fact resolve the matter, for no call for a discussion, no attempt to offer a banner of truce would be accepted by the sisters. They trusted only the word of Vandire. The Custodes at this time, even in M36, had largely kept themselves excluded from the rest of the Imperium since the heresy, and even now they remain...
I do apologize for all of the background stuff. Everybody is awake and bumping, and apparently Ember is very grumpy today, which if any of you are new here, Ember is my orange tabby. He's 5 and got a bad attitude. Hi, Bubby. What's wrong with you? You won't be a space marine? Be a space marine? He likes it when I talk to him.
Pretty unaware of affairs that were going on outside. It took the Astartes reaching out to them in this time for their involvement to occur at all, and this was perhaps the earliest awakening, or the initial awakenings of the Custodes, to begin to realise that they needed to start reasserting some level of power back into the Imperium. The sheer shock and mourning of what had occurred to the Emperor in the heresy deeply scarred them for the longest time, but they would not truly return to the fore until Roboute Guilliman reappeared to take dominion over the Imperium. The Custodies, of course, more than any others, possessed incomparable knowledge of the Imperial Palace, and so to help resolve this stalemate, a small contingent of custodians navigated through a hidden labyrinth of passages beneath the palace to emerge near to Vandire's audience chamber. Immediately, they were confronted by sisters of the Ecclesiarch bodyguard. Clearly, they could see that these were no ordinary Astartes, though, and as the leader of the custodians laid down his weapons, he attempted to convince Vandire's faithful that the High Lord they served was an enemy of mankind, of the Imperium and of the Emperor. But even now, in the face of the true Emperor's servants, they could not be swayed, so strong was their faith and their belief. To prevent further loss of life, the Custodies saw the only option may be to lead these warriors to a place few, if any, had seen since the days of the Crusades. They followed the massive golden figures through the passages to arrive at the most sacred place in all the galaxy, the chambers of the Golden Throne, where the Emperor sat in peace and stillness. What they saw within they were sworn to secrecy on pain of death, but the experience of the Six Sisters here in these chambers, the halls of the Emperor, has never been revealed. But we can imagine the blessings and the prayers they may have uttered, their spirits collapsing with love and glory at the Master of Mankind, and who can say perhaps the Emperor reached out to them, touching their spirit in some way, because finally when they emerged, their hearts were burning white hot with rage. They returned to their leader and laid out the High Lord's foul, unending treachery and corruption for all to know. Immediately renouncing their duties as Vandire's bodyguard, they sought out Vandire, who upon seeing them unleashed a bloodthirsty tirade, ordering them to march out and slaughter the invaders. The sisters' leader Alicia looked upon him without emotion in her eyes, and using the words that would one day be engraved forever upon the sarcophagus that holds her body, she simply stated, "You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal.
Right.
I renounce your lordship.
Right.
You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and now it is time for you to die." She brought her energy-wreathed blade down, decapitating the traitor, and cleaving through the Rosarius he had used to long ago deceive them all. Officially, the age of apostasy ended with the death of Lord Vandire, though the turmoil within the Imperium would last for centuries to come. The sycophants and power-hungry shells of human individuals who had followed Vandire blindly, while themselves lacking any true faith or character, were given brief trials and swiftly executed. The former power of the High Lords of Terror was returned, and they worked with the Inquisition to end the Assassin Wars of Vindication, an adjacent issue that's too adjacent for today. However, the position of Ecclesiarch remained empty, and many thought that Sebastian Thor would naturally succeed. To the shock of all, Thor refused, as he was too busy preaching the Imperial cult across the northern rim of the galaxy. He refused additional requests and was steadily beginning to earn the ire of the now insulted High Lords of Terror, who declared him to be a traitor, even dispatching forces to apprehend him. But Thor was no heretic. He willingly turned himself in and was brought before a highly embarrassing trial on Terra, personally overseen by the High Lords, who had almost immediately appeared to make themselves look quite absurd with this whole shambolic affair. Only made worse by the fact that after months, the verdict was eventually delivered by the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, stating that Thor was innocent of every charge brought against him, which feels actually pretty weird and unusual for the Imperium. Again, the High Lords offered Thor the position of Ecclesiarch, and again he refused, citing his desire to spread the word of the Emperor rather than simply sitting on the Ecclesiarch's throne on Terra. The High Lords were enraged. It took the Captain General of the Custodes to speak with Thor personally, and nobody knows just what was said. Some believe there may have been a threat of death, but this seems pretty unlikely knowing the Custodes' character and the spiritual beliefs of Thor. He doesn't seem the kind of person that would fear death. In fact, he seems he would be ready to die. So whatever utterances passed between them, the resolution still came that Thor would now agree to take the position of Ecclesiarch, but with specific conditions. Firstly, that he could travel freely across the galaxy, having the backing of the High Lords, and also to make whatever changes to the Holy Synod that he saw fit. And they agreed, and Thor became the 292nd Ecclesiarch. For the next century, Thor worked tirelessly in reforming the Imperium, once again establishing the Ministorum on Ophelia 7 and disbanding now the Fraterus Templar. he would attach and found instead the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, in its place. Thor returned to Terra at the age of 112, where he died 6 months later. At the close of
That's
the
crazy.
end of the Age of Apostasy, the Inquisition also formed a secret order within its ranks to watch over the ecclesiarchy more closely. Even now in M41, Inquisitors watch wars of faith very carefully to ensure the objectives laid down by the ecclesiarch are both justified and not exceeded by those who are actually fighting. They also monitor the temporary armies of zealots and holy militia that rally behind members of the priesthood in theatres of conflict, again to ensure that such forces are appropriately disbanded after they're needed. These affairs are usually handled by the Ordo Hereticus to ensure that the ecclesiarchy's standing military is never allowed to reach the levels it did under Vandir. The Confederation of Light essentially at this time usurped the temple of the Saviour Emperor's theology within the Adeptus Ministorum at Thor's behest. And in following Sebastian Thor's reformation of the ecclesiarchy, the church's focus shifted from the pursuit of a political agenda, as we were talking earlier, to one now that was more concerned with the pursuit of purely spiritual values. Whilst the Ministorum remained powerful still in imperial politics, it never rose to conflict as it had done with the Administratum, and its doctrines now emphasized the quest for individual piety and salvation through belief in the God Emperor. The Sisters of Battle were in time named the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Hereticus, for while they shared the faith of the Ministorum, their ultimate loyalty was to the God Emperor alone, not the ecclesiarchy, and the Inquisition always answered and acted on behalf of the Emperor. So to make that clear, should there ever be a clash between...
I still think that this is why I said I feel like it's like Van Helsing, that's an Inquisitor, right? And then, like, look how cool! Warhammer cool!
The ecclesiarchy
Need more!
and the needs of the Imperium in the future as defined by the Ordo Hereticus, the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas would in actuality always look to the Inquisition first. Oh yes, incidentally, the head of Sebastian Thor is said to now be held within the collection of artifacts owned by the Necron known as Trazyn the Infinite.
I love that I'm an hour
Amid the
in.
rich and complex tapestry that is the
So
Imperium
like,
of mankind, the Adepta Sororitas weaves...
We're like, we still got a long way to go. See, this is why I worry when I record stuff like this, and I don't think that I've taken as many stops as I probably could have, but it's like, this video is gonna be, because we still got like 20 minutes, right? It's gonna be like an hour and a half
its
long.
resolute threads. Its influence can be found throughout every corner of the vast empire. A formidable blend of martial might and unwavering devotion, they stand as the sentinels of faith, unyielding in their mission to eradicate those who defy the ecclesiarchy's will or profane the sanctity of the Emperor's domain. The Adepta Sororitas sprawl across the entire galaxy, a vast network of their orders are scattered like stars, ready to confront any threat that challenge the tenets of faith. And while the ecclesiarchy ostensibly command their actions, it is the venerable Abbess Sanctorum who wields the true authority over the sisterhood, marshalling their powers with righteous conviction. Within the Adepta Sororitas, a division emerges, cleaving them into the twin bastions known as the Great Convents. These monumental structures will serve as both their physical fortresses and organizational hubs, overseeing the intricate web of subdivisions that comprise the sisterhood. The Covenant Sanctorum, nestled upon the ancient world of Ophelia 7, rises defiantly with its towering bell spires and sentinel statues, its subterranean depths harbouring dungeons where the anguished cries of heretics echo through endless chambers and cells. Sebastian Thor, upon his acceptance of the mantle of ecclesiarch, would lay the foundations of the great convents, fashioning them to mirror each other with only subtle divergences in ceremonial customs. And this division was a calculated move, a safeguard against the ascent of another tyrant like Vandir. A similar division found root within the Holy Synod on Terra, where the Synod Ministra took its place alongside the Covenant Sanctorum. This deliberate separation ensured a delicate balance of power within the Adeptus Ministorum, its militant forces and spiritual leaders mutually overseeing each other's devotion and unwavering loyalty. Thus, the Adepta Sororitas stands united and divided, an intricate tapestry of faith and vigilance woven to safeguard the purity and integrity of the Imperium, forever vigilant against the tides of corruption and the manipulations that might seek to undermine the Emperor's divine rule. In the face of grave existential threats, humanity once looked to the High Lords of Terror as the
the heck are all this? This looks like Supreme, like, Adeptus Mechanicus. Like, I don't even know if these are, like, human anymore.
Custodians of its destiny. They held the power that could unleash a crusade against those who would threaten its very existence. And those crusades are these grand religious spectacles orchestrating the full might of the Imperium's colossal war machine, the Astartes, Militarum regiments, Imperial Navy fleets, and alongside them all, the Adeptus Ministorum answers the call. For those who carry the purity of the Imperial Creed in every fibre of their being, these massive undertakings are known as the Wars of Faith, where the clash between righteousness and heresy can spark an all-consuming planetary or even system-wide conflict. When a war of faith is declared, Sororitas orders at speed deploy their finest warriors, their battle hymns echoing through the void as Ministorum vessels descend upon the target. Sisters of Battle, accompanied by non-militant adjutants, pour forth from these holy fleets, ready to purge the heretics and sinners marked for annihilation by the Ecclesiarch. Alongside them, all manner of devout followers, missionaries, preachers who have spread the word of the Emperor in proximate systems will now gather their devout followers, uniting them in a force of furiously zealous recruits. This is their chance to unleash their righteous fury upon the faithless. These often form awe-inspiring visions both in the physical but also audible assaults, as through a chorus of faith the ranks of believers surge forth, enveloping their enemies, even amid a hail of oncoming fire, leaving no trace of heretical presence that the Emperor's light cannot redeem.
Yeah.
Wars of faith may endure for decades, even centuries, until every last scrap of the heretical enemy is purged and the ground they corrupted purified once again. Imperial history recounts the inaugural,
which isn't possible, right? Because they consider Tyranids to be heretical. And I heard once you get a Tyranid infection, you can't really take that back. Or at least in Space Marines too, like I think they like literally blow up like planets and stuff, right? Like this isn't something that they can very easily cleanse and or get rid of, right? Like I don't know, Yuki Boobuki thought process.
War of Faith as having been ignited in the early 32nd millennium. It emerged from the clash between the Temple of the Saviour Emperor, the dominant sect that held the Emperor of Mankind as a god, and the Confederation of Light, a rival religious faction born amidst the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. The Confederation also worshipped the Emperor as a divine figure, but preached ideals of selflessness, generosity and humility in emulation of his sacrifice during the Siege of Terror. Such principles stood in stark contrast to the Temple's belief in the Imperium's divine dominion over the galaxy, where the Adeptus Ministorum as the Emperor's mortal representatives craved ultimate secular and spiritual power. The Temple's ascendancy within the newly recognized state church, the Ministorum, granted it absolute authority, leaving the Confederation as the sole alternative expression of the Emperor's faith. This alternative posed a very perceived threat to the Ministorum's power and political influence, and so to suppress this challenge, the Ecclesiarch of that time manoeuvred to secure a unanimous vote from the Senatorum Imperialis, thus decreeing the First War of Faith against the Confederation of Light, by of course branding them as heretics, which was of course highly questionable. The Astra Militarum and the Imperial Navy received orders from the High Lords of Terror to assault Dimamar, the very cradle of the Confederation, their mission to eradicate this spiritual threat to the souls of the Emperor's faithful. Though some of the Confederation's followers managed to elude capture or went into hiding on Dimamar, eventually resurfacing during the Reign of Blood in the Age of Apostasy, the rival sect's power waned, yielding to the absolute political dominance of the Ministorum. The strength of their command would only grow stronger, so that in many ways we can view that the early Imperium was now transformed with the Ministorum reigning supreme, and this inaugural War of Faith would set a precedent even for the far future. Through the coming 4 millennia, it developed its own military forces, increasingly disregarding the other High Lords' arguments when declaring wars of faith, and these wars became as much a tool to eliminate internal political adversaries of the reigning ecclesiarchs and cardinals as to combat genuine foes of the Emperor. Ironically, it was during the Age of Redemption in the 37th and 38th millennia, after the reformation of the ecclesiarchy and the resurgence of the Confederation of Light under Sebastian Thor, the number of the Wars of Faith had then reached its zenith. The Ministerium would embrace somewhat more human ideals relative to the belief that it should support, rather than dominate, the secular authorities of the Imperium. The long and the bloody Wars of Faith weave intricate threads throughout the tapestry of time and the history of the Imperium, reflecting the ever-shifting balance of power and belief, as the faithful and the heretical clash beneath the undying eyes of the Emperor's divine light.
The defenders of the divine.
The Sisters of the Orders Militant ardently follow the combat doctrines established by the Daughters of the Emperor, their ancient predecessors. Their battle philosophy relies primarily upon pressing the attack relentlessly, until the enemy is within earshot of their dying screams of repentance, their hymnals, their bolters and fire. They wear war gear of exquisite craftsmanship, offering a seamless fusion of offense and defense without compromising their agility on the field of battle. Remembering, of course, that the Sisters do not wear the same power armour as Astartes. Across the Imperium, many pieces of hardware are scaled to be appropriately used by humans of different stature. An Inquisitor or a Commissar could hardly pick up an Astartes bolt pistol, but they have their own design for a regular human. Similarly, the Sisters' armour is designed specifically for themselves without compromising its functionality. And without getting too into it all, Astartes' armour does tend to be heavier, more bulky, but that's why they have the black carapace and the interface to enable them to move in their armour as they would ordinarily. Other forms of power armour or just armour worn by different members of the Imperium can be fashioned differently. Maybe it's a bit more lightweight to enable them to still move around in it. It's still a powered suit, it just doesn't have quite the interfaces within it as you would have with an Astartes. And all of this refined armour was created when Sebastian Thor initiated the further development of the Sororitas, and along with this they also created now renowned war machines, Immolator tanks with their flames, Exorcist with their missile launchers, and the Sisters still wage war with these today. They also use more readily seen transports such as rhinos. And the Sororitas, through the days since their inception, have many named leaders who are legendary among the Imperium, alongside which they bring to battle specialist fighting divisions. The Celestines, for example, are revered warriors of the Adepta Sororitas, known for their unwavering resolve and refusal to yield to any.
Yeah.
They're usually seen accompanying high-ranking leaders into battle, acting as their bodyguards and champions, raining relentless bolter fire and sacred flame upon the faithless, and it goes without saying, willing to sacrifice themselves to protect their canoness or other senior leaders of the Imperium. Induction into their ranks only occurs within the Sisterhood, as it is reserved for exceptional warriors who were most likely Sisters' superior once, possessing a tactical acumen and leadership qualities that are unrivaled. And this is entirely intentional, for were a canoness to fall in battle, then these veteran warriors bear the honour and burden of command being bestowed upon them by the Emperor himself. But in saying all that, let it not in any way diminish the standard Sisters of the Sororitas, for the Battle Sisters are the stalwart defenders of the faith, having vanquished countless enemy horrors, in doing so to spread the light of the Emperor. Any sister may find the Emperor's guiding hand by her side in battle, and in so doing find herself capable of manifesting miracles on the battlefield. Their prayers grow more fervent with each display of divine intervention, fueling their resolve to eliminate those who oppose the Emperor and Imperium. Just as the daughters of the Emperor before them, the Battle Sisters possess physical prowess and martial expertise, honed through rigorous training and combat tactics, unrelenting faith and discipline. Clad in their blessed power armour, armed with sanctified bolt guns, they strike fear into their foes. No matter the enemy, they will obliterate their targets, turning any who stand against them into gruesome, macabre displays of carnage. And for all those who demonstrate the highest levels of piety and faith, there are those who also can fall by the wayside. And when they do, dependent on their crimes, they may find themselves facing the worst enemies of humanity with a chainsword and little else. For the sisters who truly commit irredeemable sins, their fate is far worse. We're talking about...
What he is going to talk about, I do think, is probably the most crazy thing that I ever heard. And if you guys know me, I love crazy women, so I'm invested. But, like, it is actually insane.
The Repentia and the Anchorites. Repentia wear little more than rags as they're sent to charge across the battlefields to the sound of howled prayers and roaring chained weapons. A Repentia knows that she now only exists to slaughter the enemies of the faith or to give her life in trying to do so. Carrying a massive eviscerator chain blade, she unleashes her brutal fury. Chunks of flesh, shredded bone fly, as with every slash and swing she drowns steadily in the blood of her enemies. Each victim behind her a pile of shredded remains. But all she feels with every enemy she puts down is the Emperor's forgiving gaze. Unsurprisingly, a considerable number of the Repentia fall in battle. Their reasons for finding themselves in this role are usually pretty severe though. It could be something like disobeying the command of her superior, to give in to a cardinal sin of curiosity, and many more. But usually it's related to some kind of desertion of holy duty. Once handed over to the Order's militant, these sisters will undergo a merciless spiritual and physical reconditioning, and honestly, the less said about that, the better. Repentia are typically a first strike assault tool, giving them an opportunity to wreak penitent slaughter on the enemy, but also likely they will die very quickly. Still, it is possible for Repentia to redeem themselves through deeds of great bravery and slaughter. Some of the most faithful champions of the Sororitas were at one point Repentia, such as Celestine, the living saint. Any sister who is able to survive being a Repentia can often be very highly revered among her peers, considered to have of course been...
I'm gonna break this down a little bit, because I don't know if you guys can see what I see, but like, did they stab this lady eyes out? Like, what is this very, like, Silent Hill-esque? It almost looks like these, like, pieces of scripture are pinned to their flesh, or like, here, let me scoot over this way. Whop. This lady looks like she has one pinned to, like, her tongue or something. How do you recover from such cruel-looking punishment?
Touched by the Emperor. Yet this has also led to the very disturbing practice by which some sisters will even go so far as to deliberately cause infractions so as to then submit themselves to becoming Repentia. But speaking then of Celestine, within the ecclesiarchy and unsurprisingly within the sisterhood, there are many figures whose divine actions or powers rise above that of the norm, and very often these figures may be deemed worthy of the title saint. Saints in the imperial cult are individuals who have sacrificed their lives for the emperor and are revered as religious icons, or their actions have been seen to be specifically miraculous that no other account can be than the emperor working through them. They provide inspiration and represent various causes within the Ministerium, and this can range from local figures being worshipped to others who are honoured throughout the entire Imperium. Their names will adorn planets, voidcraft, streets, even in the naming of children. Saints must be formally recognised though of course by the ecclesiarchy and considered exceptionally holy individuals, with their actual words and deeds being attributed to the God Emperor himself. They can be warriors, leaders, liberators, teachers, writers who have served the Imperium and its faith. Others may be elevated to sainthood after their death, or of course as martyrs. So while saints can be anyone really in the Imperium and living, there's a difference between this and when we speak about living saints, as these are usually those members of the Adepta Sororitas who are said to be so holy in mind, body and spirit that somehow they manifest something of the sacred power of the Emperor himself literally on the battlefield. And living saints will glow with power. Even the least faithful will have no choice but to collapse to their knees in her presence. Very often they're seen with angelic wings, halos and so forth. A living saint will usually, though not always, manifest from among the ranks of the Adepta Sororitas, but it can occur among others such as Saint Sabbat, although Sabbat also has some rumours about her involvement with the ecclesiarchy and the Sororitas. Curiously, not entirely dissimilarly to the heretical worshippers of chaos, living saints most often only appear when there's a significant amount of belief, of faith, in which we see countless millions of the faithful taking up arms in the name of the Emperor, and truly extraordinary feats are performed. Then their arrival is often as swift as their departure, but most often living saints will have changed the course of history, all for the better. But these individuals were also of great interest to the Thorian faction of the Inquisition, who regard them as vessels of the Emperor's power in the model of Sebastian Thor himself. Unfortunately, this has also made them a target for the polar opposite, enemies who have sought to capture a living saint and dissect her in order to discover the source of her powers. And as noted, one of the most well-known saints, especially among the Sororitas, is Saint Celestine, who is long revered as a divine figure in the imperial cult. She was a Sister Repentia, as we said, who rose after battle, becoming a beacon of strength and vengeance. The most saintly and also disturbing aspect of Celestine's being is her journey to reincarnation, whereby she has to climb this mountain of her own dead skeletal remains to achieve life once again. She's a focus of veneration for the Adepta Sororitas throughout the centuries, and Celestine has fought tirelessly, rising from defeat and bringing renewed vigour to vanquish the unrighteous. She fought against the forces of chaos upon Cadia in its final days, and was there to witness the revival of Rabute Gulliman. But to give another example, one of the earliest known saints was of course Euphrate Kira, not a Sororitas, but a perpetual and a remembrancer during the Great Crusade. She escaped death at the hands of the traitors, and finding herself upon Terra, Kira became an avid proponent of the Lectitio Divinitatis. This was the forerunner to the imperial cult that held...
I do think it's funny that every time he says some kind of faction or some kind of thing, I'm just like, it's not even a word. But Saint Celestine or whatever is very beautiful.
The Emperor of Mankind
that is
to
very
be
sad.
the God of mankind. Her faith in the Emperor would prove to be so absolute that it would provide psychic protection against the powers of demons summoned from the warp in this time, and Kira would go on to become one of the earliest saints later formally recognised by the Imperial Creed. But then finally we return once again to the grounded world of the militant forces of the Sisters. For while the divine saints are the highest point of faith and worship, there are those who fall so far they are only suitable for a life of suffering in their final days of service. The Anchorites. We all know the horror of the ecclesiarchy in using their so-called penitent engines to punish the damned, machine constructs to which the faithless or the traitor, the heretic, are strapped in, torment amplifiers spliced into their synapses, chemical injectors implanted into their spines, their minds stripped of all thought except pain and spiritual guilt, which drives forward the penitent engines, actuators and servos, thrashing at the enemy wildly in an attempt to slaughter them or bring themselves to an end as quickly as possible. For those among the Sisters who commit such a heresy, or who fled from battle as a repentia, they can expect to be placed in similar constructs known as mortifiers. But for those repentia who not only fled, but betrayed their sisters in battle, an even worse fate awaits. For they are further entombed behind a sarcophagus of thick adamantine casing, and this protects them from incoming fire and desperately swung blades, denying them the release of death. These pitiful souls are the Anchorites. The sisters behind these lifeless masks are forced to face their long-suffering torment in absolute
that's
isolation,
so cool.
enduring
Maybe
years or
it's
even
not
decades
cool.
of agony alone, screaming to themselves, unheard by all. Many will have lost all sense of their rational mind before finally meeting their end. By the time of the Indomitus era in M41, within the ancient and the hallowed halls of the Imperium, whispers of past rites speak to the history of the Emperor and his fabled warriors who held back the forces of darkness. Throughout the millennia, the challenges have shifted and humanity has answered the call. The Sisters of the Adepta Sororitas stand resolute. They are the shield and the spear of humanity's faith. And carry out their purging wars against the heretics. They are structurally divided into illustrious orders, each a bastion of unwavering devotion. Their existence intricately woven into the fabric of the great convents. These convents are the ultimate custodians of sacred traditions. They govern and guide the sisters in all of their righteous endeavours. A sister, once initiated into an order, treads an age-old path that is rarely strayed from. At the day of her armouring, she becomes bound to her order until her soul is finally embraced by the warm, eternal blanket of the Emperor's grace. In rare instances, a sister may move from one order to another. For other sisters, where grievous injuries strike them down and permanently impair their bodies, if they're unable to be repaired or augmented, then these valiant warriors may relinquish their combat roles, embracing instead the ministrations of service or the solemn duties of ceremony. Flexibility melds with duty for the sisters, and they will adapt, embodying the multifaceted essence of their calling. For there are as equally important non-combat roles for the sisters as much as those who deploy to battle. Their fortress sanctuaries are the heart and haven for every order, and within these sacred bastions, the Sisters of Battle spend their lives devoted to worship and the forging of unyielding spirit. Orders often have more than one sanctuary which are dispersed across the territory which they oversee. But worship, of course, is not their only concern. For the Order's militant, the sisters embody the very epitome of martial perfection, committing themselves entirely to achieving purity of spirit through the mastery of combat. They follow the stringent, grueling training regimes blended with the doctrines established by the Daughters of the Emperor, their long-revered precursors. And whilst the Sororitas do not possess the sheer weight of numbers as that of the Militarum, they, like the Astartes, bring to the theatres of galactic war an elite martial prowess that is nearly unmatched among the defenders of humanity. In M41, many place the Sisters of Battle as equals among the legendary Space Marines, the Astartes. But such comparisons are of course debatable, for whilst the Sororitas wield some specific abilities not held by the Astartes through the powers of their faith, they also lack the transhuman adaptations of the Astartes. But nonetheless, many are the Astartes who would not be alive were it not for the stalwart dedication of the sisters in mastering their skills, and many who were formerly certain about their opinions regarding the divinity of the Emperor would spend time and shed blood alongside the orders of the Sororitas and discover that in fact they had suddenly doubts. Within the indomitable fabric of the Imperium, where countless worlds and their diverse cultures collide, the sisters of each order stand united by a common faith and shared teachings. They relinquish the benefits of their origins in order to serve the Emperor with unwavering loyalty. Each sister, their veins coursing with righteous zeal, seeks to purge the galaxy of heretical tyrants and
go back a little bit because Foxhead came in
They
here.
relinquish the benefits of their origins in order to serve the Emperor with unwavering loyalty. Each sister, their veins coursing with righteous zeal, seeks to purge the galaxy of heretical tyrants and immolate the abominable Xenos monstrosities that dare to threaten the sanctity of humanity. Yet, the Daughters of the Emperor were more than a community of warriors and devoted themselves to a wide range of disciplines by which they could serve the God Emperor. Many of these disciplines survived the Age of Apostasy and have been further developed by the Adepta Sororitas through specialized categories of non-militant orders. One example are the well-known skills of the Order's Hospitaller. With exception to those who hail from the Astartes chapters, their augments proving far above the capabilities of a sister, or indeed many among the biologists, they provide expert medical support to all branches of the Imperial military. And these sisters demonstrate their faith through healing and bringing comfort and relief to those in the most harrowing of battle zones. They aid soldiers in the harshest conditions or planets beset by plagues sent from the horrors of the warp. They perform complex surgeries and provide compassionate care, often being revered as holy figures by those they treat. And Sisters Hospitaller accompany various military forces, including the Astra Militarum and Inquisitorial armies. They work alongside the Order's militant. They also conduct research into new enemy or weaponized plagues, even psychic assaults, and use their findings to collaborate with other orders so as to better combat mutation and shield humanity. They also study the physiology of enemies and assist ecclesiarchy confessors in extracting confessions from heretics with expert medical care. Expert medical care being in fairly large quotation marks there, by the way. There are many types of orders that provide ancillary services within the Adepta Sororitas, as well as the ecclesiarchy and wider Imperium. While the orders militant are the most visible and well known, within the Sororitas there are many individual orders tasked with highly specialized duties. For example, the Order Fenestris maintain the extremely complicated illuminated armor glass panes of the Imperium's most holy shrines and cathedrals. Other types of orders carry out sacred duties that give them a great deal of influence within the God Emperor's domain. But whatever their task, make no mistake, they are all Sisters of Battle. While a sister during a war of faith may find herself alongside hundreds of sisters who all stand united against the darkest enemies of humanity, their canoness leading them with unwavering determination, at times the Sisters of Battle must also venture forth as smaller units with a specific objective in mind. And this may occur on worlds where a small deployment of sisters were caught off guard by an enemy invasion. They now find themselves as the most senior military force upon a world, and very often their actual battle capabilities are eclipsed now by the hope and inspiration they give to the human militarum forces they assist in overseeing. Again, in some respects not dissimilarly from Astartes. Wherever and whatever they find themselves facing, each unit of sisters of the Adepta Sororitas. No matter their number, nor the task at hand, they will be a swift and unyielding instrument of the Emperor's will, surging with righteous fury. In the grim darkness of the far future, the Sisters of Battle are the holy vessels of the human spirit, unrivaled in their piety of faith and fury, relentlessly marching towards their foes, unleashing showers or walls of cleansing fire that purge the Xenos and the heretic alike. On the battlefield they bring judgment. For humanity they bring the peace and care of the Emperor, ministering to the wounded, the lost, the downtrodden. They embody the very spirit of the Emperor of Man, a guiding light in a galaxy consumed by darkness. By their hands divine wrath is made manifest. They are the physical manifestations of the faithful. A sister walking through an embattled hive world is a shining bastion, a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching shadows, a torch in the darkness, a sign that the Emperor is here, and that he has not abandoned the souls of this world. In the dark days of the Indomitus Crusade, while the Sisters' indomitable spirit burns, the Imperium will stand, resolute,
Ooh,
unwavering,
that looks bad.
unbreakable.
That's so cool though. Battle Sister. I need to see these. I want to watch those. I think that would be fun. But is that the end of our... Well, there's a little thing at the very, very end. But that looks like that's our Sisters of Battle history. And their beauty. And their grace. And how cool they are. Or how cool they are is. They're so pretty. Waiting for the cool message thing at the end. I'll read it.
Even if you're able to kill me, heretic, my soul shall then become like fire. I shall be taken up by the Emperor, and shall blaze as one with his divine light. Forevermore shall I guide the faithful, lending them my strength until you and your cursed kind are scoured from existence.
Yeah!
You are able to kill me.
Big if true. All right, so I was right on the dime, by the way. Now I do have to edit this, and I will fix a lot of stuff, so like the posted video will not be 1 hour and 30 minutes or whatever. Well, it'll be pretty close. I'm not that great at editing. God bless you guys, and thank you so much for watching. We watched Boom. Loughton 09. The Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, Warhammer 40k. Hopefully it was good. Hopefully you guys like it. The next, there's 2 videos I want to make. Which is, I want to make a video talking about the Amazon and Henry Cavill are going to make a live action Warhammer series. I'm pretty hyped about that. I don't think a lot of people know about it. I saw like a Twitter post. And then I want to watch The Horse Heresy and make a video about that really soon. And then finish the Bricky video. Or videos. There's 2. I'm like halfway through one faction's video. But I'm sure you'll catch that my brain kind of drifted. It's really hard, my ADHD, to fight it. So I do hope you guys like this video. I hope I asked some good questions. I hope to see a lot of people be like, yeah, we love Sisters of Battle. Or we love WOG. If you made it this far in the video and you liked it, please like, comment, subscribe. If you're on mobile, you can hype the video. too. We have YouTube memberships. I'm coming back fully to streaming July 20th. And on Fridays we will be doing membership streams. I'm currently working on a game wheel for stuff that we will play, but I also want to do like, hey, this is what I've been reading, hey, this is what I've been watching, hey, this is what I learned in Warhammer kind of stuff. So I got a lot of ideas and things to kind of iron out. So if you would like to be a member, become a member. And all the stuff that YouTube likes. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all of the support. Thank you for watching stuff with me. And I will see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Bookie bookie boo wah boo bye.